Political analyst Javed Rana is joining us now from the Pakistani capital. Javed, welcome to the program. Javed, I want to start off with Vice President Vance's trip to India. He's on an official visit. It's going to be a 4-day official visit to India. He's going to discuss whole talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And the most important thing that's on the agenda is our tariffs. The tariffs that the United States has imposed on countries across the world, but still we're seeing a pause. So what's on the agenda for Vance in India?
I think at the core of the agenda is not the trade relation between USA and India. As a matter of fact, it's a bigger picture. The bigger picture is China, because now it looks like US is very desperate to contain China economically, politically, geostrategically. Now, I mean, there is basically on the face of it, it's a trade agenda between USA and India, and the tariff are going to be reduced. Some discussions are going to take place. There is a ambitious plan whereby they will increase trade by 500 billion US dollars by 2030. That is an ambitious plan both India and the US have. Right now, the trade balance is in favor of India. It's around 45 billion US dollar, which is India has a surplus trade with the USA. Something US want now that in one way or the other, this surplus trade should be reduced. Let's explore more opportunities. But when they talk about 500 billion trade between two countries, that trade is such a huge figure that is something which previously, if you look at the same statistics, around about 400 and 52 billion US dollar was the trade between USA and the China. Now that is a huge gap. Now, in a similar fashion, I think both countries want to match that gap. Not that China basically will have a 15% loss to its export because US has virtually put a kind of a trade barrier where the trade is not possible. Now, I think in one way or the other, US it seems, India it seems that gap and that compensation can be made by expanding and more this trade between two countries. But again, that is something easier said than done. And apart from this trade war, I think because obviously India is a small player, US President Donald Trump is likely to visit in the region probably at the end of this year. And this Vice President's visit is also a kind of it will pave a path, basically discuss agenda, what issues are going to be discussed. But Donald Trump's visit would be more focused on defense-related and geostrategic politics in the Southeast Asia. And the focus is obviously South China Sea, where China has built an artificial island. It has set up a military bases there. And in order to counter that, basically US has made an alliance. They call it a Quad alliance with Japan, with Australia, with India, and they want to contain China. That is a bigger geostrategic scene. But again, it is something easier said than done because China has done a lot of its homework. China is basically trying to match with the Southeast Asian countries' concerns about these artificial islands in the South China Sea. And they are basically now talking to Vietnam, talking to Malaysia, talking to Indonesia and other countries, telling them that these military bases are not threat to these countries. And though this is basically what China has done, that is a dispute. All these East Asian countries have raised objection over it, and it is a disputed territory where China has set up military bases. But again, in a broader picture, now China's focus is more on the trade. It is giving subsidies to the suppliers, to the suppliers all over the world to enhance its trade and contain and somehow the other settle its political dispute with the Southeast Asian countries. Now, I think in that context, Donald Trump will visit by the end of this year, and Vice President J.D. Vance obviously will be discussing the contours of that visit. That is also going to be part of it. But certainly the trade agreement between two countries, it will take time. It means that there is no longer free trade agreements among the major economies in the world. WTO, so-called World Trade Organization, it looks like that it is dying down now with the insane policy launched by President Donald Trump, because it has shaken up the entire international economy. I think let's see how things unfold, but I think in the broader picture, both politics and the trade is at the heart of his agenda.
Javed, we were discussing the Iran nuclear talks that were held over the weekend. Now, the Iranian foreign minister has spoken to his Pakistani counterpart. What are they discussing now? Obviously, all of these countries are on alert. Pakistan, China, India, their nuclear powers. What are they expecting from these talks, and how is the current situation in Asia when these countries are monitoring what's going on in Europe?
I think his call to Pakistan's foreign minister at this particular point of time indicates something else, though we don't find anything in the official press statement. But my understanding, it may sound like a speculative, but I think Iran has a concern that that Pakistan's may behind the scene, particularly Pakistan's military establishment, Iran had a concern that it may behind the scene support US in the event of a war between USA and Iran. Obviously, it will be war with the US could possibly fight for the apartheid Israel. I think in that context, there could be a possible talk. But again, this is frankly speaking, could be a speculative. Something I said is a speculative because we don't know exactly what was discussed there. But there have been lingering concerns in Tehran that in case negotiations between Iran and the US collapse in weeks and days to come, then there is a possibility that USA may go for some sort of a surgical nuclear strikes, because it has basically brought 52 bombers, and they are stationed in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And in the event, US has been saying time and again that they are going to launch a bigger war. They are not saying it's going to be a nuclear war, but the nuclear experts are pointing out that given the fact that Iran's nuclear program probably is a very deep inside the earth, and therefore it will be difficult to destroy it with the conventional weapons, no matter how strong they may be, and the US will have to use the nuclear weapons. That is also a source of lingering threats to Iran, and Iran has been compelled to negotiate with the USA on the terms and conditions which Iran says they are not going to accept, but I think probably they would be agreeing on if Iran is willing to bring down, to scale back the level of its enrichment in the nuclear facility. Now, IAEA has been saying that Iran is just a week ago, within a week or within weeks, it can make a nuclear bomb. Now, the IAEA inspectors are there, and they've been installed, and they are deployed. And once they are removed, then obviously it means Iran would make a nuclear bomb. I think in that context, Pakistan has obviously some sort of a role in the event of a war. Obviously, my understanding is USA would be expecting Pakistan to provide it a military basis in the southwestern province, Balochistan, which borders with Iran, and also to share intelligence to the Americans. And Iranians would be expecting Pakistan, that Pakistan would not extend a cooperation, but that is something easier said than done. At this particular point of time, nothing can be said.
Javed, tell me about the Russian response, right? Because we've, over the last few days, we're hearing reports, and the Iranian foreign minister has held phone calls with his Russian counterpart as well, Sergei Lavrov. And the Iranian side is asking the Russians to help them with these negotiations. Now, we've seen the response that the Russians have taken in terms of the Ukraine war, and they've been holding negotiations with the United States. What role can Russia play in these negotiations? What sort of assistance can the Russians provide to Iran when they're negotiating with the Americans?
Well, Russia certainly would not like another government going out of its embed. They have already faced a problem when decades-long support they had to the Bashar al-Assad in Syria. After the change of guard in Damascus, now there is a government which is not very much liking to the Moscow. So they would like Iran to be a strong country in the Middle East. But now kind of the situation that is there, Moscow is expecting Washington to help it to have a peace deal with the Ukraine on the terms and conditions of Russia basically occupying the much of the land it has already occupied. So I think Moscow is not in a position to come up with a forceful diplomatic posturing, asking US not to attack Iran. But at the same time, it will try to basically play its role behind the scene, not to pressurize Iran and not to carry out any attack on Iran. But in case there is an attack on Iran, I really doubt that in this situation, when Moscow is already busy militarily engaged with the Ukraine, it would not militarily intervene in any war between US and Iran. And in a broader picture, I think the greater possibility could be that Russia would be providing supplies of the weapons, latest supplies of the weapons. That is a possibility there. But my understanding is that probably Donald Trump is calling a kind of it's a kind of a bluff. It's a pressurizing tactics that he has been employing onto Iran. My understanding is that he would not carry out any attack on Iran, but at the same time, we should not underestimate the level of the insanity that exists in Tel Aviv. This Netanyahu is desperate to create conditions in the Middle East whereby USA carry out attack on Iran, because Iran, Netanyahu believes, is the only threat to the interest of the apartheid state. He has also referred about Pakistan, that Pakistan being a nuclear country is also a threat to Israel. In the past, he has been saying that, but again, he has not been that much eloquent about Pakistan. So in a broader picture, I think Russia's role is likely to be limited. Iran has been calling Russia that it needs to play its role. On the other hand, US wants this direct engagement, though Iran has been saying that it has been talking through Oman, but obviously, virtually, it is a direct talks between Washington and Tehran.
Javed, we're nearing the end of our program, but before we end today's episode, my final question to you is, the Saudi defense minister visited Iran last week, Prince Khalid. He met Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So, how are you seeing those developments? Are Saudi Arabia and Iran both going to mend their ties once and for all?
I think Tehran had a long-standing concern about Saudi Arabia that in the event of war with apartheid Israel, Saudi Arabia may provide some kind of military bases, some kind of support. I think Saudi Arabia's defense minister's visit to Tehran is a kind of assurance to the Tehran that it would not be partners in any war. But what is going to happen, we don't know. What goes behind the scene, we don't know. But certainly, Saudi Arabia has got a very thick relation with the apartheid Israel behind the scene.
Javed, thank you for your analysis. It was a pleasure having you on the program today.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
that is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geostrategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geostrategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.